What's up, everybody? This is Bob's Three-Toed Warriors from Studio 1329 with the Word on the Streets, Season 1, Episode 5, titled Too Good to Miss. Too Goody to Miss, I should say. So why did I pick that title? Because today I have Matt Goodwin joining me on the show. What's going on, Goody?
Hey, Bob, thanks for having me. Kind of bringing some of that Midwest humidity out to Seattle today. It was one of the more humid days I can recall. Certainly nice out here, kind of getting a little bit of that summer vibe, even if we're inside.
Sure.
And, still light out a little bit, which is nice. And thrilled to be talking to you, a little fake football.
Yeah.
Always fun. Talk some reality sports online. So I appreciate you having me. And this wasn't that long in the works or anything. So I think that, I'm glad to be one of your first guinea pigs on the podcast.
I'm glad to have you on the podcast. And why don't you crack open what you got there, and we'll cheers to that.
All right, here we go. I kind of opened it mistakenly before.
Oh, that's okay.
I got as I think I tweeted about this today, just because Kate from the Ball Blast podcast was asking a brewery question. I happen to be picking up some beer for this podcast at my buddy Ray's Lucky Envelope Brewing Company here in Seattle, Washington, in the Ballard area, which is where a lot of the microbreweries are, which is a little bit away from where I am. I live in Bellevue, which is on the east side of Seattle. But anyways, the Helles Lager, nice German style beer, very good. Got a 4-pack of 16 ounces today, and
there you go.
I'm happy to be enjoying on the pod with you. Cheers.
That's the way to go. Cheers. I'll do my unofficial sponsor, Johnny Walker, tonight. So.
Yep, there you go. Hopefully there'll be an official one day.
Maybe. I've got a lot of unofficial sponsors, so so you can catch the podcast on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and just about everywhere else. Plus, there's a good chance you will be able to see this bad boy on YouTube. Make sure when you're in there, you subscribe, give the show a 5-star rating so you don't miss any of the action, and it really helps out getting a new show going. So I really appreciate it, and I do thank you guys in advance. Goody, tell the listeners where they can find your work, sir.
Okay, well, first they can find me on Twitter if they have any questions about anything, find me interesting, like dealing with my pop culture references or anything else. They can find me on Twitter at MattGoody2. You can also find the All About Reality podcast presented by Reality Sports Online. So if you want to reach out to the folks at RSO, you have a technical question, something else, that handle is at Reality Sports On. On Twitter, the website is realitysportsonline.com. There is a separate tab for the podcast. You can find the podcast there in the hub. Our podcast hub is on Anchor, just like you, anchor.fm/RSO podcast. And you can find us on, I think, 11 different platforms. I think most people, as we were talking about in the pre-show, listen to us on iTunes, but we're on Spotify, we're on Anchor, we're on Google Play, Podbean. You can find us, pretty much wherever people consume podcasts.
Absolutely, and I absolutely love your podcasts. I've listened to the current ones, but I gotta go back because I have a good smattering of them. But then I'll run out, and I'll just keep popping back to the old shows. Get a little. I was about to say green tree, evergreen.
Evergreen, yeah.
Get a little evergreen out there every once in a while. I love it. So
it's funny, as we've gone along, I've tried to label those more going forward, but I haven't necessarily gone back and listened to everything that may have been evergreen in the initial episodes. So
people work for them. That's all good.
Yeah, I mean the Fight Club themed rules of RSO Trading Club, I think I know is definitely labeled as an evergreen podcast. That was towards the end of last season. Now we're in season 3, a little more than 60 episodes deep.
That's fantastic. So how did it start? Who's involved? Content? What are we talking about here with the podcast?
Okay, yeah, the idea kind of came from a couple different things. I mean, I think, ultimately I created the idea for a podcast because I thought there was the need, and after some folks were reaching out to Matt and Steven, our founders, saying, hey, there needs to be one. And I basically said, okay, well, I was the first writer. Like, I think that I really enjoy writing for the site, but as my kids have gotten older, I've found less time and topical stuff. We have a pool of writers right now who I think do some good work over at the site, including Bob Cowper does our basically our college scouting and rookie focus.
Nice.
Yeah, Nick Andrews does a lot of pieces on, on a little bit on strategy, a little bit on draft. He's done a great analysis that we've had him on the podcast about on the value of a rookie draft pick. Bernard Faller writes constantly. Grant Viviano's new to the fray, and so I think with that, I was looking for a way to kind of convey my strategy pieces in something that was a more digestible format that people could always refer to and not have to look in the archives for. So we didn't really know much about podcasting, and I was looking for one of these guys who was a writer to partner up with me. And Luke Patrick is somebody who played in the Writers League with me, and we always had good trade rapport, I think, and just respected each other's approaches to things and had good dialogue with that. And I think sometimes it's hard to have good chemistry with a trading partner. And I think
it's great when you do.
I think we have good on-air chemistry now. I think our trading chemistry for actually making trades in the leagues we're in together sucks now, ironically. But and he probably would tell you the same thing. That's but funny. I reached out to him, and I mean his brother actually does some broadcasting, so he kind of has a good knack for it, I think, and we feed off each other well, and we've been kind of learning and growing and trying to make it as official sounding as possible without, awesome. And he's better at than me. I think you'll hear a lot more of the likes and ums and everything coming from me, especially because he's asking me to go on these diatribes about strategy for a long time, and it's long-winded answers that gives. So,
sure.
Got a couple microphones together, figured out a platform to use. So we landed on Anchor to start, just for simplicity of recording. Then we had to figure out how we were recording the podcast. We were using Google Hangouts until that option of video chat basically went away in a way. I think it's now just back. But luckily through, we've been able to use Zoom kind of as initial users or before the curve of these, the pandemic, those meetings. And so Luke and I have kind of built the podcast to the following that it has, and 60 episodes deep, and we're kind of lucky that the fantasy community is as good as it is. And through my number fire writing days, I had some connections, and some of those people have been some of the stalwart guests on the podcast, but at the same time we've asked and cultivated and done like the biz dev type stuff to get other folks on the podcast. So awesome. We try to, even if it's ourselves considered a, maybe like a niche site or anything else, I think that we've tried very hard to stay on theme. And but the story behind the name of All About Reality actually is kind of tied into a hip hop lyric. So I'm a big fan of hip hop, and I think who knows, maybe late 80s, early 90s, NWA had a song called Gangster Gangster, and one of Ice Cube's verses was, it's not about a salary, it's all about reality. And I just kind of thought, well, hey, this is a salary cap based league, and
ties in perfect.
And so it is about a salary and it is about reality because you're basing it on the NFL salary cap, and then multi-year contracts and all of that. So, everything is real on this podcast and spectacular.
Perfect. Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
How many leagues do you play in? What formats are they?
Okay.
Just a basic question.
Sure. I'm in a total of 3 reality sports online leagues, and one that I've been in since I joined, and I would say that's a 1 quarterback league. We have 3 flex positions. I'll kind of go through them and then kind of triangulate back. The other 2, the second one I did was the Writers League, which is where I met Luke and a lot of the writers, and that's with our founders. That's a 10. So sorry, the first league is a 12-team league, 1 quarterback league. All these leagues are PPR.
Okay.
And that first league has a kicker and a defense. Then the next league, I know the defensive scoring is kind of revolutionized defensive
That's
scoring.
good.
So like a good defense like the 49ers can score as much as, you know, a top running back. So that makes it
Okay.
a little more interesting in how you're paying that on
Yeah.
contracts. In the second league, the Writers League, is a 10-team super flex.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that scoring is more traditional, especially on the touchdown side of things, and like lack of yardage bonuses, I would say. So you could probably, if you had a really good skill position player, you could probably plug them in and they might do better in a given week than
your super flex.
Than your super flex, but it wouldn't be guaranteed for that. Most often you'd be going super flex. Yeah. And we did add a flex position. I'm kind of kicking and screaming to add another flex position to add some strategy with that, because 10-team league, the talent pool is pretty deep.
Yep.
And then the All About Reality podcast league, which we created when we started the podcast, is a 16-team superflex league.
Okay.
With where we start 3 wide receivers and 2 flex. So it's very shallow in terms of talents, and especially quarterbacks are very scarce in that league. And I would say that the podcast league and the quote unquote home main league I'm in, what makes those unique is really, you know, people say to me, I think you have a question about it, about customization. I think there's a big misnomer about reality sports online in terms of, you know, its customizability, for instance. I don't know if that's something you've encountered on, you know, in social media or anything else. So
I am a huge lover of I was going to say a word that I probably would have been wrong in saying and inaccurate in saying. I absolutely love the format. So any questions I had about, like, I was having a hard time because we do half PPR instead of full PPR, but then we do half point per first down, which I absolutely freaking love. And then we do full point and full PPR for tight ends, and getting everything coordinated was me being the user error. But the guys at Reality Sports Online literally they're so fast on replying, like little tease ski here. I sent a message to him last night saying, hey, any way I can get a promo code for people who listen to the show and want to go and sign up themselves or a league. And within 2 minutes, they're like, here you go. So I'm going to give that away towards the end of the show. So
that's a good.
Make you guys listen
strategy.
the whole way through.
Yeah, totally. Make everyone listen all the way through. And if
everybody's fast forwarding right now.
Right, and like kind of the sales pitch for me on this is, you know, this is in quarantine, everything else. I think that one of the big arguments, again, you know, for some who are naysayers of Reality Sports Online is, it takes too much time and this, that, and the other, and year round. And so those people are maybe on the cusp of wanting to do something more strategic, but are afraid to jump off the high dive. And I would say that this is as good of a time as any to kick the tires, because you have the time to think about the strategy and consume content like podcasts, especially if you ever talk about it on yours. I mean, our podcast is wholly dedicated to it, I would say, and we don't really veer off the road too much on that. So I think this is, you know, and the price point, honestly, like once you jump in, the retention rate at Reality Sports Online, per my conversation with the founders, is ridiculously good, because, you know, once you've pushed yourself to be challenged in that manner, I think it's hard to view a traditional redraft league or something else, you know, as credible or as strategic.
It warps you. It absolutely warps you.
Exactly. So I don't really play any other dynasty formats right now, and that's not necessarily a knock on their interfaces or anything else. It's just I feel like I've hit the pinnacle of this.
Yeah.
Going to the customization, I think we have first down scoring, for instance, in the pod league. We also quarterbacks are worth a lot in both my pod league and my main league. We have, I think, equal points for passing touchdowns as rushing or receiving. You have half point per completion, -half for incompletions.
Oh yeah, messing with those quarterbacks.
Yeah, and then like quarterbacks take sacks, they get negative points in one of those leagues. They throw a pick six, so the Jameis Winston special is worth -9. So Jameis Winston was still a top 7 quarterback in the podcast league last year, but there was games where he'd have 35 or 40 fantasy points, where if he didn't have the 5 interceptions, he would have been worth 70. So that's pretty special. So I like to call that dynamic scoring, for guests of the pod who've come on or anything else. And really, with you could plug in IDP in this, you could plug in advanced scoring settings across different positions, or you could kind of go more traditional in terms of, with defenses and kickers and yards allowed, and you can look at yardage bonuses, etc. So I really think you can put whatever toppings you want on at the Sunday bar of Reality Sports Online. And the only rigid thing about Reality Sports Online, I would say, that some people don't comprehend or get, is the 198.2 million this year salary cap, and that's because it's based on the NFL, and
that's what I love about it. Oh my God, my league. So on this pod, we are going to shortly here, we're going to jump into basically an RSO format 101 section, which is just some of the basic things of what RSO is about, and basic features of not of the website itself, but of what makes it tick, right? And then we go in 201, where we kind of talk about some tips for those guys who are in a league and want to learn about those features, or those who just want to get pumped up about it. So I freaking love, and my league loves the cap. We were waiting on pins and needles for that damn date to fall, and we were like, okay, they're saying it might be this much, they're saying much might be that much. I've never cared about how much the salary cap in the NFL is going up, because none of that money makes me any money until I started playing RSO, and I'm like, okay, I only have $24 million available in cap space. I've got to sign X amount of players. And then, oh, sweet, they gave me an extra 10 million and change. I'll take it all day long. It's rigid, but you know what? I love it. There's another site I've heard about, and they use the real contracts of the teams. And I think that's a really neat feature. The problem with that for me is that I want to GM this bad boy. I don't want some other GM paying Amari Cooper $20 million a year, and it just blew up my budget for a guy I wouldn't have paid $20 million a year for. Don't screw me. Let me pick my own guy. So
I totally get that, and to be honest,
if it's a future sponsor, I didn't mean any of that.
Honestly, like a lot of the auction-based drafts that I do. I mean, I'm in a Yahoo Experts League with like the Matt Harmons, Brad Evans of the world. I think, as I alluded to on my podcast.
I've heard of those guys.
And great guys, a really fun, engaging league to be in. But in that league, and it's a redraft league. Say we have a $200 budget, but you're still, any strategist is still looking at this from a percentage of the cap standpoint, anyways. The only difference here is you're looking at it from multiple years and what the guaranteed amounts are, for instance. So I think like how I discovered Reality Sports Online, I had played an ESPN keeper league, and I just got bored of fine, I have Adrian Peterson, I'll just keep him as one of my 3 guys every year. And there was just no strategy in it for me, to the point that I was making trades with other teams that had more keeper candidates. And this is back in the day, like when Aaron Rodgers started ascending. I think I traded my 9th and 10th round picks to a team that had a surplus of keepers. I was like, give me the Aaron Rodgers, Greg Jennings stack. And that was kind of like the strategy for that. You know what I mean? Like it was trading a 9th or 10th rounder. But as I've evolved as a player, I decided I really need more than that. You win a couple of home league championships or anything else, and then it's like, okay, fine. You want to keep the relationships and the friendships and the community, because that's what fantasy football is all about to start. But then, a lot of these RSO leagues, I think it's about extending that community and challenging your strategic mindset, basically.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little Format 101. So to begin the RSO Format 101, I got some listener questions. They better be listeners. I'll kick their asses. Some listener questions from some of my league mates in the Capology Dynasty League. That's what we call it, Capology. I love that name. This one's from the Samoan. He's a smart ass, and he thought he was going to try and trip me up. And he goes, "What's a contract?" So what's a contract league is basically what they're asking. So I'll jump in on this one.
Okay, fine.
Cool thing about a contract league is that in a regular redraft league, you got a guy for 1 year. In Dynasty, you have him forever. Does the NFL have a guy for 1 year? No. Does the guy have a guy forever? No. He has him under contract. This is more like the NFL, which is one of the cool things about it. That's why they tie it to the NFL salary cap. Granted, we're not signing 53 men for that salary cap, although you can. That's one of the crazy things. You can have full rosters. You can have 32 teams in the format. I'm not even going to go there because that's a whole nother spiral. I wanted to join one last year. I didn't. It just sounded insane. I didn't do it. I almost did. Anyway, we're going to stay on the basics right now. So, Samoan, shut up. I got you. All right. So, when you have your yearly auction contracts, just year after year in the auction, what contracts are available in a typical, pretty common fashion for an RSO league?
Sure. I think the most representative, and I think some may alter in a startup, they may bend the rules a little bit because you have the largest player pool you'll ever have, assuming you continue with it. So what I typically see is 1 4-year contract. So I mean, and how that gets used can differ depending. A lot of the time that's your stud running back, your stud receiver.
Yep.
But at the same time, if someone wants to take a leap on a guy that they think they're ahead of the curve on and grab them on a cheap contract and they're right about that's gold
mine.
Basically.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And then 2 3-year contracts, 3 2-year contracts, and then I would say that most leagues get creative and especially in this is a manual setting, I would say, has like 1 wild card contract.
We have that, yeah.
And I would call that wild card contract basically if you sign a player at a minimum deal for $500K, you have the ability to basically add years to it.
Yeah.
At post auction, and then you have another multi-year asset in theory on the cheap. So I would say that's used for more of a
developmental
or speculative player. I'd also say that in startups, maybe there'd be a second 4th-year contract or another 3-year contract in that first year, because most of the time, and I strongly suggest against having a rookie draft in your initial year, because I just think that there's just too much of a luck factor of that draft class and where people land in a snake draft. So I suggest basically paying for those guys at market prices in year 1, and then having your rookie draft start after your first season.
Yeah. So just in what you said there, just talking about the contracts and the varying links, that strategy alone is part of what makes it freaking fun. Like I'm going to start up. Okay, breaking the announcement early, guys. We're going to have a listener league. It's going to be an auction on Yahoo. Okay, more details to come later. But that's just your simple $200 budget, and you just pick your guys. And this, you can really, when you said, I'm going to go deep on a running back for 4 years, or I'm going to get my franchise quarterback for 4 years, or I'm going to say, okay, Calvin Ridley, I think he's going to be hot stuff. I'm going to snag him for 4 years, or DK Metcalf, someone that you just have a hots for. The strategy involved in that is just mind-blowing, and it's part of what makes it just freaking fun. So what about extensions? I know they say not to use them in the first year. I know we didn't use them our first year, but we had a good time using them last year in our second year. Why don't you tell people what extensions are basically about, and we'll get to strategies for extensions later.
Sure. I would say that most leagues would probably have 1 extension per team, and that extension is used within the football season. So basically from the time the site rolls over and starts anew, so the off season, say like right after the Super Bowl through week 13 of the regular season of the NFL.
Yeah.
And if you're extending and there's different, and I'll talk about the strategy of that later, I guess, because there's different tactics you could use if you're extending in the off season versus in the regular season. In the off season, you have to use your franchise tag to even open up door number 2.
Oh, we're definitely going there later, because I have my own opinion on that bad boy.
Okay. Yeah, no, totally. So I would say 1, and I get questions about what the secret sauce is on this, and I personally don't know everything that goes into it. And it's something that, like, shouldn't be taken lightly. I think that if you find someone that works for you, use it. If you don't.
All right,
And,
I'm gonna give you the secret sauce here. One of the neat things about the extension to me is that the computer has an agent. That's in air quotes for those who aren't watching the YouTube video.
right.
I'm the old dude using air quotes. It has an agent working for it, and you can't just say, "Hey, I'm gonna give you this contract." They're saying every week, "All right, I want 2 years for X million dollars. I want 4 million or 4 years because I had a great week for even bigger contract." Whatever, it's coming up with it for you. The secret sauce to me is that it's like the stock market, right? When the stocks are flying high, prices are going high, that contract's going high. And if you know that's the guy you want, the best thing you can do is either is wait and hope they just have a down week and watch that contract and wait for it to pop. and hope that it adjusted enough. And like, screw it, I'm taking it now.
Yeah, I think like the league life cycle is so important in that. And I mean, the one thing I have ascertained, I've said on our podcast before, on the All About Reality podcast, is that the franchise tag seems like the biggest marker for the extension offers. So you kind of can walk back what that looks like in terms of number of years. So you see the franchise tag for your wide receiver is $30 million. And, walking that back, that $30 million is guaranteed, but it's only 1 year. So the player's agent would rather have 4 years than one, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
And so walk back that 30 million to 25 million for year one, then add in the percentages as they go over the contract, which, 4-year deal is like 22%, 24%, 26%, 28%. And that's not a secret. You can calculate that.
Right on there.
Or it's listed. And then you can kind of figure out whether or not that extension offer is better than the franchise tag or based on having numbers. So you can use that as a proxy, and you can definitely, in the off season, the franchise tag is very tightly tied to what the extension is.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of knowledge in that, but then like last year, Cooper Kupp goes for 3 touchdowns and 200 yards in a week or something, and his offer is 4 years, 180 million. You're like, holy crap! What do I do with that? And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna wait, and then maybe by the end of the year, it's 4 years and 95 million. So
what other leagues do you get to franchise people? I mean, seriously, come on. That's awesome.
I know it's a pretty cool tool, and I think that it's important. I mean, look, the free agent auction is the most fun thing you'll experience, I think, in fantasy football, and that's kind of the signature thing with the dynamic draft room, and you have people competing in a marketplace that looks like the trading floor of Winthrop and Valentine, trading places with the frozen concentrated orange juice futures and all that. But it's in a virtual setting, and so you have these buttons, and you're almost mad when you've used your 4-year contract and it's grayed out, and like, oh, here, I wish I had another one.
Yeah, absolutely. So for after the first year, when you do your rookie drafts, is there a common theme of how many rookie rounds? Like our league only has 2, and I almost feel like it's too little. But then because we're 25 players deep, I didn't want to convolute the rosters with too many young players on contracts. So that's why I left it at 2. But is there a common theme for what you usually see out there in rookie contracts? Or and mix that with, depth of rosters maybe?
Right. That's a good question. I think most of the leagues I do 2 to 3 rounds, and really depends how many teams are in it. If it's a 10-team league, we've moved to 3 rounds in the Writers League.
Sure.
Just I think 30 draft picks is still, the players at the end of that are useful.
Yeah.
In the podcast league, that's 16 teams, we do 2 rounds.
Absolutely.
And then my home league is a 12-teamer, and we do 2 rounds. And my thought there is, especially when you're getting in years 4, years 5 of your leagues, the free agent pool can be pretty low. So in year 2 even, because you're straight past the auction. Yeah. So it's like, and then you have some teams, depending on where you are, who like to hoard rookie draft picks and this, that, and the other, and I think I
Me.
know that's my whole podcast league. I feel like I had to give up 2 future seconds just to get like Mr. Irrelevant this year at the end. And when AJ Dillon was still around, I was like, I got it. I want in this thing. I love Aaron Jones, but I figure I'm like, okay, even if he's in a timeshare, it's still potentially valuable. So I would say, ultimately you want to have exciting options to bid on in your auction.
Yeah.
And so I like limiting the amount of rookies such that a couple rookies, may hit, and say you do your rookie draft in the spring or early in the summer, and then in August you're seeing news that Terry McLaurin is rekindling a flame with his college quarterback Dwayne Haskins, and this guy's going to be, he's already like the number 1 receiver on the team at training camp, and this, that, and the other, and hey, he was drafted in the 3rd round and nobody picked him in a 2 or 3 round RSO rookie draft, and then he becomes an exciting option, maybe a sneaky option if there's top end elite,
Sure.
proven stud talent already, in the auction, and becomes a valuable asset, one of the better contracts in the league then. So
Yeah.
I think even in the deepest leagues, some of those guys that don't get picked in the rookie draft kind of surface and become very valuable to teams. I mean, examples of that in leagues I've been in, McLaurin was one. Preston Williams, who I know he got hurt, but before he got hurt, he was balling.
And those become the same guys that eventually become your contract extension guys.
Yeah, exactly. And even just lesser guys like, Darren Waller was a guy that, he wasn't a rookie last year, but those are guys that, end up being super valuable, long-term cheap contracts that you can pluck in an auction if you're paying attention.
Well, and then for our rookies, like I said, we do 2 rounds. We only did 3 years. You can do 3 or 4. We only did 3 because we wanted to keep that pool for the auction. We just want to keep that auction kind of flowing. That was the idea. Right now I'm sitting on a bunch of good rookies I picked up last year because I just did a bunch of good trades and it worked out well. And it's like, damn it, I wish I had them for 4 years. But those first round rookies, you get a rookie extension. What? The other formats don't let you do that? No, there's a rookie extension that lets you, just like the NFL, put out that the 5th-year option that a lot of people aren't getting, or in our case, in our league, a 4-year option. It's just another neat tool you have that you just don't find elsewhere, that smart owners who look at the budget, look forward, they can piece things together and you can take advantage of. It's really cool features.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and I don't really think there's a limit on those first round rookie extensions. The only limit is the finite amount of players that your league has
in the first round.
But
right.
Beyond that, if you happen to be trading for, say you had Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, and Dalvin Cook, that you made trades for all those guys early on or whatnot, in theory you could be looking at a bunch of money just keeping those guys each in tow for an extra year. So it makes it unique, and that price tag is less than the franchise tag, but it's a transition tag, so it's the top 10 average at the position.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still typically below, depending on where you are, and especially if you have those guys on rookie drafts and people say you're in year 3 or 4 of a league and there haven't been many running backs that have gotten a lot of money on the free agent market, then that contract offer it's still below what they would get in free agent market. So and that's really how you get ahead in this. You want to be ahead of the curve with the contracts that you have. So even if you're extending them into big dollars, it still may be below what you would be paying in the marketplace.
So I'm gonna hit on the last 101 topic here, and I don't know if you've used it yet. I think want to try and vote it into the league because it's so affordable and such a fun move. If we don't add it this new season, we'll probably add it next season or the following. But practice squads, RSO is always coming out with I say RSO for those who haven't already caught on. RSO is Reality Sports Online. It's just much easier to say RSO.
Yeah.
They just keep looking for ways to make this game more like an NFL GM. So they made a practice squad where you can pick up guys on super cheap. I think it's like $100,000, something like that, which is nothing in this league. and then people can actually go and try and steal them from you, and you got to bid on them, those kind of things. And so it's those guys though you want to take a shot on, and you can promote them to the practice squad. And there's different contracts involved. Again, it has its own agent to it, but it's a really crazy neat feature that lets you put your stamp on your guys, and other people put their stamp on their guy. And then when somebody goes down, people come knocking at the door like, I'm taking this dude. And you're like, no, I'm going to pay him. You're not taking him, and stuff like that. Have you used the practice squad yet? Have you voted into any of your league?
We did have it. We had it in our leagues last year, and
Okay.
I don't think there was. I mean, last year was a weird year because I don't think there was too much. There wasn't like a Philip Lindsay type that I think everybody kind of that someone signed to practice squad, and then all of a sudden he was a must-have. I would say,
Sure,
maybe like a Rashad Perryman at the end, but by then I think that was like the fantasy playoffs, and I don't know the practice squad. I think practice squads may have only gone through a certain week. I don't really remember. But yeah, I mean, we had it as a tool, and I mean, most of the leagues I'm in, we try to implement all the features because a couple of them are obviously like writers or podcast league or whatnot.
Yeah, well, I know about it.
Yeah, I like the idea of it, and I mean, I don't think the practice squad really restricts or detracts from from at least the auction pool, because it happens post auction.
Okay.
You know, because it starts basically the practice squad starts in, I think, right before the regular season or something else. So I think it can be a useful tool. I mean, I think it's sometimes hard. You get some announcement that one of your players may be getting poached, and you're trying to figure out what to do, and something. I mean, I think there's maybe some first year hiccups on that. Maybe then the other team decided, hey, we're not going to pick this guy up, and they pumped the brakes, and then you still have this announcement in your queue that like your player's being poached. Like, well, I really didn't have to do anything then, because they retreated it. So I think there's a little bit of trickiness with it, but I don't. In theory, I don't take it incredibly seriously because I just think it's a fun feature.
Yeah.
That you know, it's kind of cool to know that someone may be coming after one of your players, and kind of has an element of like the voice chair turn steel type to it.
I think in a super flex, I would be trying to stash any young quarterback, especially if it's the backup to my quarterback.
Yeah.
You picked up. I'm like, I could see my own little waiver wire where I would be pretty creative there and try and, you know, my own handcuffs, a rookie running back that's not stellar, but he's my handcuff. I'm like, all right, I get dibs on this guy.
Right. Yeah. I think it makes sense if you have a guy. I mean, I think I had like Dontrell Hilliard at one point. I know in one of the Superflex leagues I had Nick Mullins, and I have the podcast. I don't know if you've listened to those episodes, but Luke and I have like a very strong affinity for Nick Mullins because he was someone we had to plug and play into a Superflex league and thrust into a starting role to keep an undefeated season intact.
Yeah, I actually listened to that episode a day or two ago, actually.
Yeah, and so he's my ride or die. I'll have Nick Mullins on almost every roster in RSO.
You can have him.
Yeah, even if I'm wasting a contract, like wasting him on my roster at the end of my roster. So, anyways, that's just kind of a fun.
That's all good. That's cool.
Yeah.
So that's some basics on the 101. And so I know to a lot of people listen to this who are like, dude, I don't play that format. I get it. This is Spanish to you. But the cool part is, I swear to goodness, if you try it, you will freaking love it. So let's move into some of the 201 stuff that takes those basics and really just embellishes them. So some tips and strategies, basically what we're talking about here. And so I heard on one of your podcasts, I don't think it was you, but one of y'all were talking about, I'm gonna tag this guy, and one of my league mates was thinking about doing this, and for half a second I thought about doing it, but I'm like, I'll explain why I did in a second. But talking about tagging a guy, franchise tagging a guy in the off season, that way you own him, so then you can extend him for 2, 3, 4 years, whatever that contract turns out to be. You a fan of that? You love that? You heard of it? Obviously you've heard of that. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you're talking about franchise tagging and extending in the off season. What do I think?
Step A to go to step B. Yep.
Yeah. I've done it before. I've done it before, and I wouldn't do it all the time. I think the player matters, the situation matters, like the league life cycle matters. I think that where I'm trying to remember where I have done it. And I remember I made a trade, I think, for in the off season of a tag where I traded around the rookie draft. I think I traded my 2.01 and Mike Evans on my franchise tag
Mm-hmm.
for DeAndre Hopkins, who was just kind of rated a little higher than him, and
Sure.
also on that team's franchise tag. So the contracts for Evans and Hopkins were exactly the same. And then I extended them in the offseason because it was a known number, and that number happened to be less than what I was tracking on Evans for during the season.
Okay.
So that's where I'm saying use the franchise tag as a yardstick. And sure, an elite receiver, 4 years, young receiver still in their mid-20s who've already shown a ton of talent. That's, a top dynasty asset. So yes, in that case, use it. And then, I mean, the downfall of that is you don't have the extension to use in season. And
That's my thought.
So,
2 tools to do 1 job.
Right, exactly. And sometimes you want 2 tools to do 2 jobs because you're trying to get ahead on the competition and
here's an example.
And have those, yeah.
So this year, 2 guys that I have this coming year, 2 guys I'll have expire, other than 1-year guys I pick up in the draft. But currently, look at my roster. I only have 2 guys to expire next year, and that's Jimmy G, which at this moment in time, I'm okay with letting him walk out the door. But he could have a great season.
Jimmy, you talk about Garoppolo?
Yeah, Garoppolo.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And
then
Jimmy Graham's an afterthought at this point, right?
Yeah, and then Michael Thomas. So I want to keep Michael Thomas, right? This is a dynasty league. He's also one of the highest paid players. So my thought is, okay, maybe if Garoppolo has a good year, I extend him. What's his face? Michael Thomas. I have a name disease. I'm going to say it right now again,
No
as I always do. Michael Thomas is already at the pinnacle. I'll just franchise him for another year and then use my, extend him next year. So I can use both those tools. What usually comes into your mind when you decide to extend somebody, tag somebody? What kind of makes that differentiator for you?
Okay, it's a great question. I think elite top tier talent I try to extend, especially with position scarcity. So running backs, receivers. If you have running backs, I'm always skittish about number of years at a certain point. So I don't know that running backs are great extension candidates, certainly in the offseason.
Because running backs' lives don't matter, they say?
Yeah, kind of. So, like an example with me in the Writers League, I have Aaron Jones. So somehow last year I ran into like the Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack in like a semifinal playoff game. And I had a backfield last year of Christian McCaffrey and Aaron Jones in a
How's
league
that trophy
where you
feel?
started 2 running backs, but I didn't win because I ran into that stack. So in the semifinals. So anyways, Aaron Jones was expiring for me, and I had basically my 2 franchise tag candidates, a super flex league, were Tom Brady, and I think this was before. I think I made this decision a little bit before he signed with the Bucs, but it was Brady and Aaron Jones, and I ultimately went Aaron Jones, even though I think there's going to be touchdown regression, etc.
Sure.
I still think he has a receiving role, etc. And I didn't, and this was before the NFL draft, I think, because I had to be at the locker tags. But just because the free agent pool of running backs was weak, and I just wanted to protect. I thought I could more easily get a quarterback either in the rookie draft with the pick I had in the trade market, or I had decent cap space. I could just buy one in the auction. And all those quarterbacks were like old anyways, like Brady and Rodgers and Breeze or whatever. So I ended up trading 1.05 and a couple first next year to get Russell Wilson on for another 3 years. Just because I didn't like some of the landing spots of the rookies or whatever. So got a few late picks back. But anyways, so Aaron Jones in that case seemed like, hey, the Packers haven't really extended running backs. He's probably more valuable there in the known situation than going to another team. So Aaron Jones, I made the franchise tag for 29 million or whatever. Fine, easy decision. He's better than replacement. I kind of filled my other voids, at positions otherwise, no problem. But then the door number 2 opens and says, hey, do you want to extend Aaron Jones for 4 years for $120 million based on the franchise tag value you gave him? And so, meaning, do you want to get rid of this option to extend a player during the season? And I still have time to decide on that. But right now, for me, and with an off-season extension, you can't make the offer to the guy in season. You have until the end of the off-season, if you franchise tag someone, to offer them a contract extension.
So you do it or you don't. So
yeah, exactly.
So you lose both. Can you use the contract on someone different?
You use the contract on someone different
okay.
in the regular season.
Regular season, right? That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
And so I just kind of, and I don't even know who I have who are potential extension candidates on that. But I opted for that. I think I have Kareem Hunt is expiring. I didn't pick up his rookie option just because it was like $20 million. It was too much money, $20 million or whatever.
For a current backup, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I mean, I may have like Jamison Crowder. I don't think I have anyone super exciting, maybe a tight end or something, But I wanted the option in maybe if I trade for somebody as an asset and then want to extend them, if they're expiring, that makes them more valuable to me or something. So anyways, I decided I don't want to give Aaron Jones 4 years, and I certainly don't want to give him $30 million a year for 4 years. So in that particular case, no. I think that I like in one quarterback leagues, I think quarterbacks are interesting franchise tags, depending on if you have one that is kind of Konami code, like a rushing one, or someone in a league that rewards accuracy, and if points per completion, whatever, then I like that formula. The franchise tag also tends to work for tight ends very well.
Yeah.
And beyond that, if it's a vehicle to get a guy like your Michael Thomas, in-house for as long as you can keep him at what you perceive less than you'd have to pay him in the auction, then I'm all for that.
Yeah. No, I found a season or two ago, I had a Njoku, just picked him up on a 1 year. I didn't want him, but I knew people did want him because he was, hyped up to the Browns with Baker coming in and everything. And so I was able to find someone who was like, okay, here's a franchise deal. What his price will be. You want him, give me X draft pick. So I was just getting a draft pick for a franchising guy and shipping him out, Of course, put all that in writing before you do the trade in case someone backs out.
Yeah.
I got a text message. He said we're doing this, and I hit go. So in auction leagues, in regular auction leagues, you have people who often take one or two strategies. They take the studs and duds, the stars and scrubs, however you want to say it, or you got the guy who goes the balance strategy. Real briefly, I was going to say Capology. That's what I call my league. In Reality Sports Online, would you say it's pretty common to go one way or the other, or is it pretty common to go both? Just depends on who you are.
By balance, you're saying just not giving huge contracts to people and
people who like to have a little more depth, but not the big stud contract, or the guys who are like, I'm banking everything on these 4 guys.
I think you'll find more people gravitating to the kind of studs and duds strategy. Okay. I like to kind of play the market a little bit depending on where we are, and sometimes you just get in a startup league and people will be spending more than what your comfort level is, and as you get adjusted to it, then you may overpay on the back end for the last receiver in the tier, the last running back in the tier, but at least you have the knowledge of seeing how the market played out in the auction and taking that. So, I mean, there's some people kind of come in and like, hey, the first year I want to compete and not F this up, basically. So I'm not going to sign anyone to $35 million deals that have half a year of a track record or whatever. I'm not, say a startup happens this year and be like, I'm not paying $30 million a year for 4 years to Kenyon Drake,
Nah.
Right? You know what I mean? So, So I think that, I think people play both sides of that, but you really have to figure out what is of value to you and how you employ that. So
how you want to craft it.
Right. If you decide, hey, I come hell or high water, I'm using one of my 3-year contracts on a guy that I think is going to break out, but hasn't necessarily 100% proved it yet. That, say you were looking at this, you were doing this auction last summer, and you're like, I really believe in DJ Chark. I don't think anyone else does. People may make fun of me, they may think I'm nuts, but I'm going to give DJ Chark $1.5 million a year for 3 years, and so $4.5 million overall contract. And now, if you were right on that, like, you have a top 24 receiver
right.
for next to nothing, and then which affords you the next year you can gamble on on a bigger contract than someone else, or you can make a trade, or it just frees up so many possibilities. So it's kind of like the rookie. It's kind of like the non-first round rookie in the NFL, like when Russell Wilson hit as a third rounder and the Seahawks were contending. They had all this money to spend on the defense and all this money to bring in anyone else, to kind of complement the talent, because we're paying a rookie quarterback next to nothing.
Yeah. So I know how I do it. And just basically some people, just, I have a buddy who just uses a sheet of paper. He keeps track of his budget in the auction that way. Some guys, I'm a spreadsheet guy. I got a spreadsheet that when I pull from here, it pushes money there, et cetera, because I like to geek out like that. What would you say basically your strategy is?
I like to have the spreadsheets, but sometimes these auctions move kind of fast.
Don't they? Yeah.
So next thing you know, if you're not paying attention, or you can't convince your league mates that they need to pause. One of the great features about it is the pause function.
Yeah.
Especially if people have like bladders where they need to go every now and then.
Yeah.
So especially if there's drinking involved in the auction. So yeah. So I think those things can move fast. So I like to have spreadsheets and targets and things of that nature. And, if you have percentage calculated, a lot of people, I think, whether they're in a redraft league or anything else, and they're in where they're spending a percentage of some cap on something, so that they kind of are setting boundaries or parameters on where they think those players will go in the auction. And sure enough, sometimes that when you're in the auction, it deviates from your expectations, and you may push your boundary or not push it depending on what you're looking at. So I do like to use spreadsheets. I think that spreadsheets are better in doing auction preparation, not necessarily on where you think contracts will land, but where you think your league landscape is going to gravitate towards certain players or positions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you're kind of getting the landscape of, instead of going team by team and looking and be like, oh, this guy's gonna be a problem for me in the auction. He's got $100 million in cap space, and he needs 2 wide receivers, a quarterback, and a running back. And I have $40 million, and I really want one thing, but I think this guy's gonna want the same thing.
Yeah. Well, let's pop a couple of listener questions in here.
Absolutely.
So, Trubisky Business from my Capology League says, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how to think about salary dump trades. This is a real thing.
Yeah.
When they make sense. So he says, asking as someone with 2 years, $80 million left on a David Johnson contract. We have another person with 2 years, $88 million left on a little Lev Bell action. So it's a common thing you have, especially with running backs who were hot and now they're not necessarily hot.
Okay.
So, and just how would you say you kind of your thoughts on that?
Okay. Is this your league?
All the questions are coming from my league. So the guys are
no problem. And
gracious enough.
How many teams?
12.
Okay. Yeah. So here's my thought on that. As I just recently traded for David Johnson this offseason on a not much different contract, a little bit less than that. And basically I reached out to I think that person put David Johnson on the market. This is before he landed with the Texans.
Sure.
That was in the podcast league. 16 teams put David Johnson on the market and said, "Hey, I don't really think anyone's going to buy, but make me an offer if you want." And so I kind of got creative, and I have a reputation for that, I guess. And I had T.Y. Hilton for about $20 million on my team on an expiring deal. And so I offered him T.Y. Hilton for David Johnson's 2 years and say $70 million or so. And as the sweetener for that, I wanted sweetener in that contract because I was giving, I'm taking on a bad contract.
Yeah.
And so I asked he had Deebo Samuel on a second round rookie deal. So I had 3 more years of Deebo at $1.5 million. So if I'm a buyer in that sense, I want either a draft pick or a draft pick that I value, or a player with a sweet contract. And so then I'm basically, as a buyer, I'm averaging those out and saying, okay, fine. I really like Deebo. I think he could be, a stud on my team for cheap for a long time. I also, I looked at David Johnson. I was like, 2 years isn't that much to stomach. And then in a 16-team league, I looked at value over replacement player.
Yeah.
I was like, I said, I didn't know David Johnson would get traded, but I thought he'd have enough of a role on the Cardinals offense that at worst I could plug him in one of my 2 flex positions, and he wouldn't do worse than half the team's flex guys in that deep of a league. So
running backs were at a premium, and you went and got one,
right?
And you took a shot,
right? And now he's on the Texans, so he should definitely see volume. Sure. So I mean, he may not be worth the contract I'm paying him, but at the same time, like, when there's a non-existent free agent market, and you don't have that much cap space in an auction, it's like, hey, at least I'm getting a shot at taking a chance on a guy that could produce before anyone else has a right to. And all it cost me was a guy I was gonna most likely lose anyways.
Sure.
So I kind of pulled 2 starters out of 1. I feel like on that team.
Yeah.
But if I'm the seller in that situation, the question is how much sweetener I'm really willing to attach to give someone up.
Yeah.
If they have 3 years on it, on that deal, then that sweetener could be first round draft picks.
Yeah.
Things that, an asset like a Deebo Samuel or something else.
Yeah.
And always try to get, if you're trying to sell in that. So say you have to give up a first with David Johnson to get rid of him. Try to get a second back or something.
Yeah.
So so there's some psychology of where you are in the draft. You don't want to be left out of something. And
plus you can flip that with other stuff for creativity later.
But you have to basically look, and if you're splitting the contract up in half or whatever, like say you could just put them on your IR if you don't have rules against that or anything else. Like I wouldn't be trying to dump someone who has a 1 year left on a bad contract. But if it's 3, I'm definitely looking to move that person.
Yeah.
If it's 2, I think it depends on what you think you could do with that space also.
Yeah. So to me, one of the neat things out of this to pick up, and you kind of mentioned there, and I would probably, you might be the creative one in your league. I'm probably the creative one in my league because most trades seem to go through Bobtown. Okay. I'm willing to leave a little cap space at the end of the draft so I can go snag the quarterback off the waiver wire when your only quarterback got hurt in a super flex, and now you need one, and I'm now selling it to you. And moving some things around, some dead assets, and picking up a draft pick for a guy I don't really need on my roster. Just I'm 7-11. Let's go.
Yeah.
So it's one of the neat things about this league is that you can look for that creativity. You can have some fun with it, and you can do stuff you just can't do in other leagues, and that's pretty cool. So, next listener question comes in from Doomsday D, little Cowboys fan there, obviously. He says, with running backs carrying such a premium now, is zero RB a viable strategy? And I think this is almost more of a redraft question, but it's also a question I think of saying, okay, do I avoid these huge contracts and lean heavier on wide receivers? I think that's the way you could probably relate that question to our RSO.
Right, and kind of how I answered it was saying, I think only if you could really get the definitive top tier of receivers and get multiple ones.
Yep.
So if you're coming out of something with Devontae Adams and Michael Thomas, or
I have both those guys on my team.
Right. So like if you're, I didn't know that, but if you're coming away with that, for instance,
different story, right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But the hard part is the replacement value of running backs is kind of too high, and there's just not. If somehow your receivers are a pool of I
seconds.
Yeah, so Keenan Allen
Yeah.
for maybe, or Keenan Allen and Cortland Sutton. I don't know that you're that excited. I mean, you as a Broncos fan maybe, but
I have him too.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the replacement value piece is too high to be stuck with running backs that are like, if your running backs are like Sonny Michel and Matt Breida, like, is it really worth it to do that?
Yeah.
Because it's how often are you? I mean, a lot of those running backs you're going to get in rookie drafts, but then it may force you to take someone you don't want to when you can get more value some other way. So I think that I think that the top tier of wide receivers is shrinking.
Yeah.
And so that makes it harder to pass up if you can get a couple of those. But I think the balance ultimately is more important.
Yeah. So here's his. He actually threw me out a second question.
Okay.
It says and in general, so what does a contract cycle look like as the league matures? Do people still? So basically, in our first year, we took out the old checkbook and we were just writing checks like there was no bottom to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, $30 million for this guy, $40 million for that guy, $30 million for this guy, $40 million. Now those contracts are coming up and coming due.
Right.
So as people's contracts expire with that much money on them, do people just go and replace them with another running back, wide receiver with that much money? Or do people kind of learn their lesson and kind of back down? Or in the auction, nobody gives a damn. You're not getting that guy. I'm getting him. I'm spending the money. What would you say there from your experience?
I think now, I mean, the first league I did is now into year 7.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a premium guy in the market, you're looking at $55-60 million a year to get. I mean, I'm in the league that like someone's paying Antonio Brown $60 million, and I think this is the last year of that deal.
Thank goodness for them.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, he helped them win a championship at one point. But
sure.
But I think you only see that stuff go up unless that particular player has leveled off some. I think that, you just get people who are thirsty for trying to win, and they feel like they have their one piece away.
Sure.
I think the people who got burned by big contracts will naturally have parameters or limits. Like, I'm sure you have certain GMs in your league who are like, there's no way they're going to spend more than $40 million on an individual player.
Yeah. My spreadsheet won't let me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I think you do have that, but I think especially when you start kicking in all these features and rookie drafts and extensions and this, that, and the other, and it's an arms race to basically protect that as much as you can. And I think that, you're not going to see that many teams looking at.
You don't get to keep the extra money from the budget, right?
Right. I mean, this year could be interesting. I don't know. I think RSO mentioned in one of the emails that, I mean, the next year is potentially the first year the NFL cap could go down. I think RSO would put some protection in place with that. But, like, I think, I mean, well, with, if they don't have fans in the stands,
I get it. Yeah.
Like, who knows what that would look like. So, it could turn into like all this madness that's going on with baseball. Yeah. So anyways, yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to do this one in rapid fire. This is my ask all preseason question I give all my guests.
Yeah.
So who is one quarterback, one running back, and one wide receiver that you can possibly see without squinting too hard, finishing in the top 5 at their position on the season, but you're able to draft them 13th or later at their position?
Okay.
So it's really a redraft question, but
yeah,
people are starting to think a little bit redrafty, and if we can give them a little take on a steal, then why not? So the quarterback, who do you got?
I kind of have 2 exactly ranked the same, and that's Matthew Stafford and Danny Dimes.
All right. Well, I had your 1 for 2. I had Matt Stafford and Big Ben. That's funny.
Yeah,
I can see both of those. I don't like Danny Dimes' first 4 games. It's a little scary.
Yeah,
I feel like in redraft you can let someone take him, get pissed off, drop him, and then pick him up for the good games. He has a really tough start.
Yeah, I just think he's got a lot of assets, and I think he has kind of sneaky running ability. One thing I'll say, I read a fantastic article on fantasy points by Scott Barrett, and he was talking about like upside, basically like upside wins championships or something, and it was just a great in-depth piece about. I mean, I think it looked into like the Scott Fish Bowl and some other things, and
Sure.
if you pick, I think he was one of the offseason advocates last year for Lamar Jackson, and I know the rushing quarterback narrative's there now, but I
Sure.
think that if you're just kind of playing vanilla in leagues and picking James White where he's supposed to be going and this, that, and the other, you're not going to win leagues that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
unless you have unless you were lucky enough to have like Christian McCaffrey and Pat Mahomes or something, combination of that or whatever. So for me, I think that Stafford was at a really nice clip before he got hurt last
Definitely.
year.
Without question.
And just high passing volume. You still don't know much about that defense.
And he still has Galladay.
Yeah, exactly. Good musical rendition too. I like it.
So yeah,
that's my running back. I was using Fantasy Pros. He looked like he was on the fringe of the 13, but I would go with Josh Jacobs.
Okay. On the fringe. He's on the fringe. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's behind. He was at like 13, right?
He's at 12 on the. I'm currently on there at full PPR. Sanders is at 13 on the list I'm looking at, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It's still the concept is there. I'm okay with that. I think both those guys have a great opportunity to, if things go right, get there.
Yeah, I think very little competition. Not a great defense. I just think he's in line for a lot of tote basically, and he did well. I mean, he was banged up a little bit last year, and he did really well with it. So I liked his situation a little bit better than some of those guys who are out who also were on the fringe. So I think I think Fournette was on the fringe too, and I mean, who knows? Like, Fournette's basically in a contract year, but I just don't trust that team's confidence in him. And
I went with Miles Sanders and Todd Gurley. Sanders, if he gets the work, which he could.
Okay. Yeah.
And Gurley, but he needs to stay healthy.
Yeah. No, Gurley was someone I was looking at, and for some reason, when I looked at Sanders last night, he may have been 12.
Flipped.
So
sure.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
take it.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay.
And what do you got at wide receiver?
This one's a little easier for me. It's Terry McLaurin. I think he's around 25-ish on Fantasy Pros.
He is down there. Yeah, he's currently on this one. He's 26, so it's even further. Yeah.
Right. I just think that like a tremendous deep threat runs a great route tree. Like in year two with a really good offensive coordinator with Turner. I just think he has college chemistry with Haskins, and even if Allen is taking some snaps, or who knows if Cam Newton somehow ends up there, but I don't think Cam Newton's playing for the Redskins. But I just think he's got all the dynamics to be a stud in this league, and I just think he's the guy.
Yeah, I went with the homer pick with Sutton.
Yeah.
For none of the fact that he's a great talent. He's a Denver Bronco, and who knows what can happen this season. They have a great team around him this year, and we'll see. Do I really think he'll make 5? No, but for the boys, I'll take it.
I was kind of trying to go something splashy too, to get up in the top 5 at the receiver position, where that tier is pretty nice. I feel like you need somebody who's gonna
really make
some splash plays too.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I went with him, and also just kind of what other receivers they have on that team. I think he's the clear cut top option, and it's not close.
Absolutely. All right, I told you guys that at the beginning of the show I was going to have a promo code for you, and I do, because I'm not lying. So if you're excited about giving the Reality Sports online format a try, then I got a promo code that'll get you 10% off your team, or even 10% off your entire league's fee. Goody, you got any guesses on what that promo code might be? One guess? Only one.
I want to say it probably has my name in it in some way.
I didn't go your name. I was honestly being more arrogant than that. It has to do with me.
Okay. How about Bob's Three-Toed?
Very close. Very close. It's going to be a little Boom Says Bob. So if anybody follows me on Twitter, you'll see that little Boom Says Bob all over the place. It's my little smart ass remark when I'm making a point or something like that. And the guys are good enough to let me use Boom Says Bob as the promo code. Caps don't matter, so if you want to use them, great. If not, it is not case sensitive. But it's good until Friday, June 5th, which is 1 week from when this is airing and you're hearing it. I don't know if it expires the morning of June 5th, the night of June 5th. I don't care. If you're too slow to get on there and get it, go now and just do it and don't worry about it. So get your butt on realitysportsonline.com. Join a league now. You can even search in there to join leagues that are existing. If you like IDP, it's in there. If you like small leagues, big leagues, it's all in there. Check it out. It's pretty cool. Get your boys together. Start your own league. You can do everything. It's a pretty cool deal. Once you play Reality Sports Online, you'll have a difficult time joining other dynasty formats. Yeah, you'll still pop into your redrafts with your boys every once in a while. But adding dynasty formats, just your brain is a little bit melted because it's just you've had the goodness and you're like, okay, I want some more of that. That sounded like a drug. I didn't mean it that way, but it's kind of what it is. So go sign up now. On my next show, I'm going to have the Hollywood Titan himself from IDP Nation podcast to talk a little IDP. What a weird concept. It's in his name. If you play IDP, if you're just curious about it, you're not going to want to miss the episode. We're going to wrap this bad boy up. But Goody, remind the listeners where they can find you.
Okay, you can find me on Twitter at MattGoody2. You can find the All About Reality podcast at anchor.fm/RSO podcast. Or you can find that on the Reality Sports Online website as well, realitysportsonline.com. You can find the good folks at Reality Sports Online on Twitter at Reality Sports On.
All right. And I can be found at Bob's Three Toad. That's the number 3. On YouTube, you can find me at Bob's Three Toad Warriors. I'll be the only guy out there with that stupid name. And you can listen to new shows that drop on Tuesday and Friday mornings. I think that's the time I'm kind of settling in on. I kind of like it. On Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and Podbeam. That's all for this show. It's been Bob's Three Toad Warriors and special guest, Mr. Matt Goodwin, Mr. Goody. From the All About Reality Sports podcast, reminding you that soon enough you'll be able to hit the waiver wire, set your lineups, and dominate your opponents. Until next time, see ya.